The stars had always watched over Earth. For millions of years, they burned in silence while humans grew from simple creatures into builders of cities and makers of machines. Humans looked up at those stars and wondered if anyone else was out there. They sent radio signals into the darkness. They launched probes and satellites. They dreamed of meeting other intelligent beings. They should have been more careful about what they wished for. The galactic hegemony of aligned worlds had existed for over 50,000 years. They had conquered more than 4,000 species across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Their warships could crack planets in half. Their armies numbered in the trillions. Every species they met either surrendered immediately or was destroyed completely. There was no third option. High Arbiter Vexthalon stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominance. He was considered the greatest military mind in the hegemony. He had personally overseen the conquest of 200 worlds. His name was spoken in whispers across the galaxy. Children of conquered species were told stories about him to make them behave. "We are approaching the 3rd planet of this system," said his navigation officer. "The one the locals call Earth." Vexthalon nodded slowly. His large round eyes studied the blue and green world on the viewscreen. Such a small planet, such a young species. They had only discovered radio waves a little over a century ago. They had barely touched their own moon. This conquest would be easy. "Send the standard greeting," Vexthalon commanded. "Inform them that the hegemony has arrived to accept their surrender." The message was sent. For 3 hours there was no response. Vexthalon was not worried. This was normal. Most species needed time to panic properly before they could respond. Then the human response arrived. "Hello there," said a cheerful woman on the viewscreen. She had dark hair and warm brown eyes and was smiling widely. "This is Ambassador Maria Santos of Earth. We got your message and we are very excited to meet you. Please come closer so we can welcome you properly. We have prepared refreshments." Vexthalon blinked his large eyes several times. In 50,000 years of conquest, no species had ever offered refreshments. "This is unusual," muttered his second in command. "They do not understand the situation," Vexthalon replied. "They will learn." The hegemony fleet moved closer to Earth. A small human vessel came out to meet them. It was tiny compared to the hegemony warships. On its side, painted in large letters, was its name, the Audacity. Vexthalon found that name strange, but did not think much about it. A meeting was arranged on a neutral vessel. Vexthalon brought his finest warriors, all dressed in ceremonial golden armor that had made countless species tremble in fear. They marched in perfect formation, their footsteps echoing like thunder. The human delegation was waiting for them. There were only 5 of them. They wore simple dark suits and carried no weapons. They had brought a table covered with strange items, brown liquid in white cups, circular pieces of bread with colored toppings, and various small objects. "Welcome, welcome," Ambassador Santos said, walking toward them with her arms spread wide. "Please sit down. We have coffee and donuts for everyone." Vexthalon stood at his full height of 7 feet. He spread his arms wide and let his ceremonial cape flow behind him. His large round face was set in an expression of absolute authority. His curly tail stood straight out, which was the hegemony sign of dominance. "I am High Arbiter Vexthalon of the Galactic Hegemony," he announced in his deepest voice. "You stand before the greatest power in the galaxy. Your world will be added to our empire. Your people will serve us or they will be destroyed. Resistance is—" He stopped. Ambassador Santos had made a strange sound. Her face was turning red. Her shoulders were shaking. She pressed her hand over her mouth. "Is she ill?" Vexthalon asked, concerned despite himself. "No, no," said another human, a tall man with gray hair. He was also making the strange sound. "She's fine, please continue. Your tale is very impressive." Vexthalon straightened his back proudly and continued. The hegemony has conquered 4,000 species. We have. Ambassador Santos made a sound like air escaping from a balloon. Her eyes were watering. She turned away and her whole body shook. "What is happening?" Vexthalon demanded. "Is this some kind of attack?" "No, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," Ambassador Santos said, turning back around. Her face was wet with tears, but she was smiling. "It's just, you look exactly like." She couldn't finish. The strange sound started again, louder this time. All 5 humans were making them now. They held on to each other for support. One of them had to sit down on the floor. Vexthalon turned to his warriors. They looked confused and slightly worried. This had never happened before. "We demand an explanation," Vexthalon shouted. Ambassador Santos took several deep breaths. She wiped her eyes. "I'm sorry. This is very unprofessional. It's just that you look exactly like an animal we have on Earth. They're called pugs. They're small and we keep them as pets. They're very cute." Vexthalon did not know the word cute. His translator struggled with it. The closest meaning it could find was small and worthy of affection. "You think the hegemony is worthy of affection?" Vexthalon asked, confused. This made the humans make the strange sounds even louder. "What is that noise they are making?" one of his warriors asked. "I believe," Vexthalon said slowly, "they are laughing at us." The High Arbiter of the Galactic Hegemony, conqueror of 200 worlds, stood in his golden armor while 5 humans laughed so hard they could barely breathe. They laughed at his large round eyes. They laughed at his flat face. They laughed especially hard at his curly tail. For the first time in his long military career, Vexthalon had no idea what to do. "Would you like a donut?" Ambassador Santos asked, still giggling. "The chocolate ones are really good." Vexthalon looked at the circular bread. He looked at the laughing humans. He looked at his confused warriors. Something told him this conquest would not go as planned. 3 days had passed since first contact, and High Arbiter Vexthalon was beginning to understand what a headache felt like. The humans had invited the hegemony delegation to their planet for what they called proper diplomatic discussions. Against his better judgment, Vexthalon had agreed. He told himself it was to study the enemy before destroying them. Deep down, he was simply curious about these strange creatures who laughed at conquerors. The meeting took place in a large building in a city called New York. Vexthalon arrived with 50 of his finest warriors. The humans arrived with sandwiches. "Before we begin," Vexthalon announced, standing at the head of a long table, "the hegemony demands tribute from Earth. You will provide resources, technology, and soldiers for our armies. Failure to comply will result in the complete destruction of your species." Ambassador Santos nodded seriously. "We understand completely. We have prepared Earth's tribute." She pressed a button. Doors opened at the side of the room. Humans wheeled in several large boxes. "Inside these containers," Ambassador Santos said, "you will find Earth's greatest cultural treasures. We offer them freely to the hegemony." Vexthalon felt a moment of satisfaction. Finally, the humans were behaving properly. He gestured for his warriors to open the boxes. The first box contained small rubber objects in various shapes. When a warrior squeezed one, it made a high-pitched sound. "Those are squeaky toys," Ambassador Santos explained. "Very popular on Earth." Vexthalon stared at her. "Squeaky toys." "For playing with," she added helpfully. The second box contained thin plastic cases with moving pictures on them. The translator identified them as comedy specials from something called streaming services. "Entertainment," Ambassador Santos said. "Hours and hours of humans telling jokes. Your people will love it." Vexthalon felt his eye begin to twitch. The third box was smaller than the others. When a warrior opened it, something moved inside. A small, furry creature climbed out. It had large, round eyes, a flat face, and a curly tail. It looked almost exactly like a tiny version of Vexthalon himself. "This," Ambassador Santos said proudly, "is Chairman Biscuits. He is Earth's true leader. We present him to you as a sign of our respect." Chairman Biscuits looked up at Vexthalon. He yawned widely, showing tiny teeth. Then he walked over to Vexthalon's ceremonial cape, lay down on it, and went asleep. The room was very quiet. "Is this a joke?" Vexthalon asked softly. "Chairman Biscuits is very important," Ambassador Santos said. Her voice was steady, but her lips were twitching. "He has over 2 million followers on something called Instagram." Vexthalon turned to his warriors. "We are leaving. Prepare the fleet for planetary bombardment. These creatures have insulted the hegemony for the last time." He marched out of the room, his cape dragging Chairman Biscuits along for several feet before the small creature woke up and wandered off to find food. Back on his flagship, Vexthalon ordered his war council to assemble. They would plan Earth's destruction properly. No more talking, no more donuts, just good, clean conquest. But when he entered the war council chamber, something was wrong. "High Arbiter," said Admiral Crexton, one of his most trusted officers, "we have a problem with the ship systems." "What kind of problem?" "The translation computer. It has been affected by the human cultural database we downloaded for analysis." Vexthalon sat down heavily. "Explain." "Every official announcement now begins with the phrase, 'according to my calculations,' followed by, 'that's what she said.' We do not know what this means, but we cannot make it stop." "Disable the translation computer." "We tried. When we attempted to access the weapons systems, they began playing music, the same music, over and over. The engineering team calls it the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme. They have been unable to stop it for 6 hours." Vexthalon put his large head in his hands. "How did this happen?" "We believe the humans infected our systems with something called memes. Our technical team is still trying to understand what memes are. So far, they have determined that memes are both very simple and completely impossible to remove." The door to the chamber opened. A young warrior entered, looking nervous. "High Arbiter, there is another problem." "Of course there is. Several human diplomats have come aboard our ships. They say they are here for cultural exchange. They have been teaching our crew members something called poker." "What is poker?" "A game involving cards and lying. Our crew members find it very exciting. 3 admirals have abandoned their stations to play. They say they will return when they win back their ceremonial armor." Vexthalon stared at him. "They bet their armor." "Yes, High Arbiter. Also the humans brought food. Flat bread with cheese and various toppings. They call it pizza. There has been a fight in the mess hall." "A fight over food?" "Over whether fruit belongs on the pizza. The argument has spread to 4 decks. Engineering is not speaking to weapons control. The navigator has locked himself in his quarters because someone called his food preferences wrong." Vexthalon stood up slowly. He walked to the view screen and looked out at Earth. Such a small planet, such strange creatures. "How long have the humans been on our ships?" he asked. "Approximately 12 hours, High Arbiter." In 12 hours, the humans had infected the hegemony's computers, started gambling among the officers, and caused a civil war over pizza toppings. Vexthalon thought about the 4,000 species the hegemony had conquered. None of them had ever caused this much trouble. Most of them simply surrendered and did as they were told. They were sensible. They were predictable. The humans were neither of these things. "High Arbiter," Admiral Crexton said carefully, "what are your orders?" Vexthalon was quiet for a long moment. Then he made a decision. "Officially, we are still preparing for war. Unofficially, I want to know everything about these creatures. Study their culture. Learn their ways. Find out why they laugh instead of cry, why they give us squeaky toys instead of gold, why they fight over pizza." You wish to understand them, High Arbiter. I wish to know how to defeat them, Vexthalon said, and something tells me that will not be as easy as I thought. From somewhere deep in the ship, the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme started playing again. In the mess hall, the pizza argument had expanded to include 8 decks, and in the poker game, another admiral had just lost his helmet. The war had not even started yet, and the hegemony was already losing. The Galactic hegemony officially declared war on Earth on a Tuesday. The declaration was broadcast across all channels to every corner of the galaxy. It spoke of human insults to hegemony honor. It detailed their crimes against diplomatic protocol. It promised swift and terrible punishment for the species that dared to laugh at the greatest military power in the known universe. The human response came 3 hours later. It was a video message from Earth's Secretary of Defense, a large man named Gerald Thompson. He appeared on screen looking very serious. He opened his mouth to speak. Then he started laughing. For 47 seconds, Secretary Thompson laughed without stopping. He held onto his desk for support. His face turned red, then purple. Several times he tried to speak but failed. Tears ran down his cheeks. Finally, gasping for breath, he managed to say, you guys have little curly tails." Then he fell backward out of his chair and disappeared from the screen. The video ended. This response was broadcast to every hegemony ship, station, and colony. 4 billion soldiers watched their enemy laugh at them. High Arbiter Vexthalon watched it 17 times, trying to understand what had just happened. "This is psychological warfare," he concluded. "They are trying to demoralize us." "Is it working?" asked Admiral Crexton. Vexthalon did not answer. He did not need to. Reports were already coming in from across the fleet. Morale was dropping. Soldiers were confused. Some were angry. Others were strangely curious about their own tails, looking at them in mirrors and wondering if they really were funny. "We attack immediately," Vexthalon ordered. "Send the invasion fleet to Earth. We will show them what happens to those who mock the hegemony." The invasion fleet consisted of 500 warships, each one capable of destroying a city. They jumped through hyperspace and arrived in Earth's orbit in perfect formation. They powered up their weapons. They prepared to rain fire upon the planet below. Then they noticed the Earth defense fleet. The human ships were much smaller than the hegemony vessels. There were only about 50 of them. They were not particularly impressive in design or firepower. But someone had painted large cartoon eyes on all of them. Every single human ship had 2 huge friendly eyes painted on its front. Some had been given smiling mouths as well. One had what appeared to be eyelashes. They looked like toys. They looked ridiculous. What are those?" asked the hegemony fleet commander. "Sir," said a communications officer, "we are receiving transmissions from the human ships. Thousands of transmissions. They appear to be images." "Images of what?" The officer was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was confused. "Small animals, sir, with text on them. The text is misspelled. I do not understand the purpose." The images flooded every hegemony communication channel. Cats demanding invisible hamburgers. Dogs making poor financial decisions. Frogs sitting strangely on benches. Each image was more confusing than the last. Each one seemed to mean something, but the meaning was impossible to grasp. "This is an attack on our communications," the fleet commander asked. I do not know, sir. The Psychological Warfare Division is requesting guidance. They say they have never encountered anything like this. Some of them are having difficulty concentrating. One analyst has been staring at an image of a confused cat for 3 hours. The fleet commander tried to focus on the battle. He ordered his ships to advance. But everywhere he looked, he saw those cartoon eyes staring back at him. Every screen showed strange animals with strange captions. His officers were distracted. Some were actually trying to understand the images instead of fighting. "Perhaps," said his tactical officer slowly, "the cat is confused because it does not understand human economics. Is that the joke?" "Focus," the commander shouted. "We are at war." Meanwhile, on Earth, humans were watching the battle with great interest. They had set up viewing parties. They sold snacks. They made bets on which hegemony ship would be the first to retreat. They did not seem particularly worried about the 500 warships pointing weapons at their planet. This was because they knew something the hegemony did not. Their real weapon was not their ships or their missiles. Their real weapon was spreading through the hegemony like a disease. It was called culture. Over the past weeks, human television shows had been quietly distributed throughout the hegemony fleet. Comedy programs, drama series, something called reality television that seemed to serve no purpose except making viewers feel better about their own lives. Hegemony soldiers, bored during the long journey to Earth, had started watching these programs. First just one or two out of curiosity, then more. Then entire crews were gathering to watch together. Now, in the middle of a war, reports were coming in from across the fleet. Entire colonies had stopped working to finish watching something called The Office. The sacred warrior caste had discovered that humans dressed their pets in small costumes and were now engaged in a heated debate about whether this was disrespectful or adorable. 3 ships had broken formation because their crews were arguing about the ending of a show called Lost. And then came the defection. Admiral Horthful, commander of the 7th Battle Group and veteran of 40 planetary conquests, sent a message to High Arbiter Vexthalon. He appeared on screen looking shaken. "High Arbiter," he said, his voice trembling, "I can no longer serve the hegemony in this war." "Explain yourself," Vexthalon demanded. "The humans showed me a video. A small creature like ourselves, one of the animals they call pugs. It was wearing a costume designed to look like a human food item. A hot dog, they called it." Admiral Horthful began to cry. "It was so small, High Arbiter, and it looked so happy. It did not know it was dressed as food. It just wanted to be loved." He wiped his large eyes. "I have killed millions in the name of the hegemony. I have destroyed worlds without mercy. But I cannot make war on a species that puts little costumes on animals that look like us. I cannot do it." He requested asylum on Earth. The humans accepted immediately and promised him access to unlimited pug videos. Vexthalon watched Admiral Horthful's ship turn and fly toward Earth. He watched the human defense fleet with its cartoon eyes. He listened to his officers argue about television shows and pizza toppings and misspelled cat images. For the first time in his long career, High Arbiter Vexthalon, conqueror of 200 worlds, began to wonder if this was a war the hegemony could actually win. The humans had not fired a single shot. They did not need to. High Arbiter Vexthalon sat alone in his private chambers, staring at the wall. Outside, his fleet was falling apart, not from battle damage, not from enemy weapons, from something far worse. His soldiers were happy. Reports came in every hour, each one more disturbing than the last. The engineering crews had formed a book club. The weapons officers were learning to cook. Someone had started a newsletter about gardening, and it had more subscribers than official military communications. The war was 3 weeks old, and the hegemony had not managed to fire a single weapon at Earth. Every time they tried, something went wrong. The targeting computers would play music. The communications would fill with strange images. The crews would get distracted by arguments about fictional characters. And through it all, the humans just kept laughing. Vexthalon made a decision. He would end this war personally, using the oldest and most sacred tradition of the hegemony, ritual single combat. One champion from each side would fight. The winner's species would rule the loser's species forever. It was simple. It was honorable. It could not possibly go wrong. He sent the challenge to Earth. The humans accepted immediately. Ambassador Santos seemed very excited about it. "We would be honored to participate in single combat," she said in her response message. "Please meet us on the neutral moon of your choosing. We will bring our champion." Vexthalun chose a small moon with no atmosphere. He brought his ceremonial armor, his sacred blade, and 5,000 witnesses. This would be done properly. This would be recorded for all of history. The humans arrived in a small shuttle. When the door opened, Vexthalun expected to see a mighty warrior, perhaps one of their soldiers, perhaps a trained fighter. Instead, a very old human woman stepped out. She was small and wrinkled and walked slowly. Her hair was white and thin. She wore a colorful sweater with small animals knitted into it. Behind her, several humans carried a variety of objects: a flat board with squares on it, a small box of cards, and a strange machine with a screen. "This is your champion?" Vexthalun asked, confused. "This is Ethel," Ambassador Santos said proudly. "She is 93 years old. She volunteered because she has always wanted to fight an alien." Ethel squinted up at Vexthalun with watery eyes. "Oh my," she said. "Aren't you a tall one? Do you eat enough? You look thin." Vexthalun towered over her. His sacred blade was longer than she was tall. His armor weighed more than she did. This made no sense. "I demand a real opponent," he said. "Ethel is our chosen champion," Ambassador Santos replied, "unless you are afraid to fight a 93-year-old grandmother." 5,000 hegemony witnesses were watching. Vexthalun could not refuse without looking weak. "Very well," he growled. "Prepare for combat." "Wonderful," Ethel said cheerfully. "Now, which type of combat would you like? We brought chess, cards, and karaoke." She pointed at the items the other humans had brought. "I do not know what these things are," Vexthalun said. "Chess is a game where you move little pieces around a board. Cards is a game where you try to have better numbers than the other person. And karaoke is where you sing songs while words appear on a screen." Vexthalun stared at her. "I meant physical combat, fighting with weapons." Ethel looked disappointed. "Oh, that kind. Well, if you insist." She turned to the other humans. "Someone get my knitting needles, they will have to do." Vexthalun could not believe this was happening. He, the greatest warrior in the hegemony, was about to fight an elderly human woman armed with knitting needles. "I will not harm her," he told Ambassador Santos. "This is absurd." "If you refuse to fight, you forfeit," Ambassador Santos replied. "Those are the rules of single combat, are they not?" They were indeed the rules. Rules that Vexthalun had used countless times against other species. He had never expected them to be used against him like this. The combat began. Vexthalun circled Ethel slowly, unsure what to do. She stood in place, smiling up at him kindly. "You have lovely armor," she said. "Is it heavy? It looks heavy. You should sit down and rest." "This is a fight," Vexthalun said through gritted teeth. "Of course it is, dear." Ethel began walking toward him. "I had a son who liked to play fight when he was young. He is 65 now. Do you have children?" "I will not discuss my personal life during combat." "Everyone should have someone to love," Ethel continued, still walking forward. Vexthalun found himself backing away. "Family is important. Do your people have families?" "Stop talking." "I made you a sweater," Ethel said. She pulled a large knitted garment from somewhere inside her cardigan. It was purple and yellow and had small pictures of flowers on it. "I did not know your exact size, but I guessed. Try it on." Vexthalun's warriors watched in horror as their high arbiter backed away from a small human grandmother, offering him knitwear. "I do not want a sweater." "Nonsense. Everyone needs a sweater. It gets cold in space, does it not?" She had somehow gotten very close to him. Before Vexthalun could react, she reached up and pinched his cheek. Her tiny fingers grabbed his face and squeezed gently. "Such a handsome young man," she said warmly. "Your mother must be very proud." Vexthalun froze. No one had ever touched him like this. No one had ever spoken to him with such genuine affection. For a moment, he forgot he was a conqueror. He forgot he was a warrior. He felt like a child being praised by an elder. His eyes grew wet. His lip trembled. I forfeit, he whispered. The words echoed across the moon. 5,000 witnesses stood in shocked silence. The High Arbiter of the Galactic Hegemony had just surrendered to a grandmother. "Wonderful," Ethel said happily. "Now put on the sweater, you will catch cold." Vexthalun put on the sweater. It was too small in the shoulders and the colors were strange, but it was warm and soft and made with care. Ambassador Santos stepped forward. By the rules of single combat, Earth is now independent and free from hegemony control forever. Vexthalun nodded slowly. He was still thinking about what Ethel had said, about family, about being proud, about being loved. "High Arbiter," one of his admirals said carefully, "what are your orders?" Vexthalun looked at his warriors. He looked at the humans. He looked at Ethel, who was now offering sweaters to his guards. "I do not know," he admitted. "For the first time in my life, I truly do not know." The hegemony had lost. But standing there in his flower-covered sweater, Vexthalun was not sure that losing felt as bad as he had always thought it would. In fact, it felt strangely like winning. 2 years had passed since the war that never really was. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The galactic hegemony of aligned worlds still existed on paper, but no one called it that anymore. After a vote that humans definitely did not manipulate, the official name was now the Galactic Hangout. Vexthalun, who now insisted everyone call him Vinny, stood in front of his new business. It was a building on the hegemony homeworld that served both pizza and comedy. He had painted it bright colors and put comfortable chairs everywhere. A large sign above the door read, "Vinny's Place. Good food, bad jokes." He was wearing the sweater Ethel had made him. He wore it every day. "Another busy night," said his assistant, a young hegemony soldier who had once commanded a warship and now commanded the kitchen. "We have 40 reservations." "Excellent," Vinny said. "Make sure we have enough pineapple." The assistant made a face. "You know that starts arguments." "That is why I do it," Vinny replied with a smile. "The humans taught me that arguments can be fun when no one is actually angry." Across the galaxy, the changes were everywhere. The planet Cracker fleet, once the most feared weapon in existence, had been converted into food trucks. They traveled from world to world, serving dishes from thousands of different cultures. The most popular was still pizza, but tacos were gaining ground. The rigid hierarchy of the hegemony had collapsed, not through violence but through something far more powerful, the inability to take things seriously anymore. When a species learns about memes, about comedy, about the simple joy of laughing at themselves, it becomes very hard to maintain a brutal dictatorship. Revolutionary movements had sprung up on hundreds of worlds, but they were not the usual kind. Instead of weapons, they carried signs with funny pictures. Instead of battle cries, they chanted jokes. The old leaders tried to suppress them, but how do you fight an enemy that makes you laugh? One by one, the conquered species had demanded their freedom. One by one, the hegemony had let them go, mostly because the soldiers were too busy watching television to stop them. And through it all, there was Chairman Biscuits. The small pug that Ambassador Santos had presented as Earth's true leader had somehow become the most important figure in galactic politics. 3 worlds now worshipped him as a god. His face appeared on currency. His birthday was a holiday on 12 planets. Chairman Biscuits, of course, had no idea about any of this. He spent his days sleeping, eating, and occasionally falling off furniture. This, his followers said, was proof of his infinite wisdom. The official ceremony marking the new galactic order was held on Earth. Representatives from all member species gathered in a huge stadium. Flags flew from every pole. Music played from every speaker. Ambassador Maria Santos walked to the podium. She was older now, with gray in her hair, but her smile was the same. The same smile that had greeted Vexthalon at first contact, right before she started laughing at his tale. 2 years ago, she began, we met the Galactic Hegemony. They came to conquer us. They came with weapons that could destroy planets. They came expecting us to surrender. She paused. Instead, we gave them donuts. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Even the former hegemony officials chuckled. They tried to scare us with rituals of dominance. We couldn't stop laughing at their curly tails. They declared war on us. We sent them memes. They brought a fleet of 500 warships. We painted cartoon eyes on our ships and confused them so badly they forgot to shoot. More laughter. We did not defeat the hegemony with weapons. We defeated them with something far more powerful. We showed them how to have fun. She turned to look at Vinny, who was sitting in the front row with Ethel. The old woman was knitting another sweater. She had made over 300 of them now, one for every species she met. We showed them that life is not about conquering others. It is not about power or control. It is about finding things to laugh about. It is about sharing food and stories and bad jokes. It is about making friends with people who are different from you. Ambassador Santos raised her glass. So here is to the galactic hangout. Here is to pizza and memes and sweaters and pugs. Here is to the galaxy that learned how to laugh. The crowd cheered. Millions watched across thousands of worlds. Even on the farthest edges of space, beings raised glasses and cheered along. Vinny stood up and walked to the podium. He was still very tall, still had large round eyes and a flat face and a curly tail. But he no longer looked scary. He looked like what he had become, a retired conqueror who made pizza and told jokes. When I first came to Earth, he said, I thought humans were strange. You laughed at danger. You made jokes about death. You treated everything like a game, even things that were serious. He smiled, showing small teeth. I thought this made you weak. I was wrong. This is what makes you strong. You face the darkness and you laugh at it. You meet enemies and you offer them donuts. You find creatures that look like you and you dress them in small costumes and love them. He looked at Ethel. A wise human once asked me if I had someone to love. At the time, I did not understand the question. Now I do. The answer is yes. I have the entire galaxy to love, and the galaxy loves me back. Ethel waved at him and held up the sweater she was making. It was for a species from the outer rim who had 12 arms. The sweater was very complicated. The old hegemony believed that strength came from fear. That power came from making others obey. We were wrong about that too. Real strength comes from connection. Real power comes from making others want to be your friend. He raised his own glass. The humans have a saying that I have grown to love. It goes, we came in peace. We also came to party, and honestly, we still cannot get over the tails. He turned and showed his curly tail to the crowd. Then he wiggled it. The stadium exploded with laughter. Representatives from species that had been enemies for thousands of years laughed together. Warriors who had conquered worlds laughed alongside the species they had conquered. Everyone laughed. And in the front row, sleeping peacefully on a velvet cushion, Chairman Biscuit snored softly. The most powerful being in 3 galaxies could not be bothered to stay awake for his own celebration. This, everyone agreed, was exactly as it should be. The galaxy had many challenges ahead. There were resources to share, wounds to heal, and relationships to build. But for the first time in 50,000 years, the beings of the galaxy faced those challenges together. And when things got hard, they knew what to do. They would laugh about it. They would share pizza. And they would remember the strange species from a small blue planet that taught the galaxy the most important lesson of all. Nothing is so serious that it cannot be improved with a good joke and a curly tail.